Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. How are you today? I hope you're doing well. It's Tim here, and in this video, I'm going to be guiding you through the steps to create this landscape painting. I would consider this painting to be kind of a hybrid of my own style with a little bit of Bob Ross flair thrown in. I know you guys really liked the Bob Ross video I did a couple of years ago, and my painting has changed so much since then. This painting isn't based off of any one of his paintings, more just based in that overall style. And with all of these videos, truly my goal isn't just to show you how to paint this painting, but to help you with tips and tricks along the way for your own paintings as well. So if you decide to paint along with me, and if you're on Instagram, please tag me at TimStarStudio. I would absolutely love to see it. Upcoming here is the palette and the hex codes that you'll need to create this painting with me, as well as the brushes that you're going to need as well. If you don't have the damp brush, I have a video up on my channel on how to recreate it for the iPad. And the first thing that I'm going to have you do is take a screenshot of this trace layer I created for you. You're going to trace over the top of it in a new blank layer, that way you can follow along. And when you're ready, let's begin. All right, so getting started, we are going to add a new layer. I'm going to put this underneath of our trace layer. We're going to take the trace layer, turn it down to about 11% or so. We're going to go back down to this layer. I'm going to take the soft airbrush, 40% size or so, and I'm going to take this first teal turquoisey blue, put that at full size, and we're going to lay down a wash of color over the sky. I'm then going to take this pinky color right here, we're going to put that in the middle, and then I'm going to take this second color in the first row, and we're going to put that right under there. So next I'm going to take Gaussian blur, and we're going to blur it to about 51% or so. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do, we're going to add a new layer. And then we are going to take that light pinky color again. I'm going to switch over to the damp brush. About 7-8% size or so, about 75% or so opacity. We're going to stick this layer in overlay. We're going to start creating our clouds. And this will create a lot of pretty variation within the clouds. This is going to be kind of a nice little evening scene. Probably early summer sunset time period. Like that area of time between like 6 to 8 o'clock where it's not dark and the sun's not quite setting yet, but we've got a little bit of these really pretty pastel colors that start to take over the horizon. And then we're going to take the blur brush. I'm going to switch back over to tutorials. And then we're going to go to the damp brush for the blur tool and go to about 40% or so opacity. I actually think it'll help to put on my brush cursor to that. Yeah, there we go. And then we're going to lightly blend it out. Just leaving a little bit of the texture behind. You don't want to get rid of all of it, but we're just getting rid of any of the harder edges. And I am thoroughly caffeinated today, so are you feeling it now, Mr. Krabs? I definitely am. And then I'm going to take the opacity of this, and we're going to turn it down just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to add another new layer. We're going to put that layer in overlay again, using that same shade of pink, and we're going to lay down another wash of color. And I'm putting just a little bit of the clouds out of frame, putting a little bit of that heavy color right through here. We kind of want a little bit of a heavier cloud look today. I love white puffy clouds. What about you? I love the way the clouds look during the summer. With the heat, all of the clouds rise and we get these like plumes of clouds that are just gorgeous. And then we're going to take the blending tool and lightly blend it out. Oh my gosh, so we had a situation. This is the first tutorial that I have recorded since the great accident of this past weekend. So, unfortunately, one of the tutorials that I had ready to go, my iPad didn't like the space, didn't like the amount of space that I had available. So I went through and started deleting stuff. Well, unfortunately, I deleted the original file that the tutorial was a part of. And if you know anything about iMovie, if you get rid of the source file, the entire tutorial is gone. So that begins our little sordid adventure. So I decided I had a backup. So I was like, well, we're just going to reset my iPad. Everything will be fine. I'll just go back to a previous backup. Well, I did that, and when it came back, it did not download. So not only did I lose the one, I lost 3 other tutorials. So I am mourning that a little bit. However, I'm trying to look at it as a positive spin. And I'm like, well, this gives me the opportunity to re-record them in a different way, because I'm actually liking this record as we go a little bit better. I don't know about you guys, but it's... for you guys making videos as well, it is so much easier to make the content as we're going. And here, I forgot to mention too, I'm adding just a little bit more color just to kind of brighten some of that up. And then we're going to lightly blend it out. And with the opacity being around 40%, it leaves just a little bit of the texture, and I'm kind of avoiding the upper edges. That way we keep some of the puffiness, because if I go over it, it'll just erase it, which we don't want. So then I'm going to take the opacity again. We're going to turn it down to about 60% or so. Okay, I'm going to do one last layer of clouds, put that in overlay again. Same step. I think I'm going to go maybe just a little bit smaller with the size, like 5%. And start laying that down. These colors are starting to remind me of cotton candy, which I absolutely love. I haven't had cotton candy in years. My grandma used to have this cotton candy maker that we would use quite often, and it was the coolest thing because I'd never seen it made like that before. But it like forms like spider web crystals, which is very cool. And then you dip the stick in the crystals as they're going around, and it's just the coolest thing. Okay, so as soon as you are happy with your clouds, we're going to take that. Oh, it's still in normal. Actually, I kind of like it better in normal. We're just going to leave it there. Happy little accidents today, which are always Tim approved. Okay, so we're going to start painting our mountains. We're going to go and add a new layer. We're going to zoom up here just a little bit. I'm going to take this blue that is the 4th color in the first row. We're going to take the water pen, shrink it down to like 14% size. I'm going to follow my trace outline. And don't worry if some of like the edges like are a little craggy looking. That is what you want. So nothing needs to be like super sharp. And that's why I love the water pen. And it was such a fun little find. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did. I was just looking through other brushes for a good liner pen, and when I was in the calligraphy section, I was like, oh, hold on here. Why isn't this brush in the painting section? Because it is magical. Okay, I'm going to scoot that over just a little bit. Then I'm going to take the damp brush with the blur tool again, about 8% size, 40% or so oh, that's too much opacity. Let's go down to like 16% because we just want, nope, not enough. Just kidding, just kidding. Let's go up to like 25%. There we go. And we're just gonna lightly, nope, not enough. Just kidding again. Let's try 30%. I'll get there eventually. Okay, that's what I want. So about 30% opacity, and we're gonna lightly blend that out. Kind of blending some of this background transparency up into the mountain itself, taking away any hard edges. I'm gonna back that up just a little bit. Okay, so starting a new layer, we're going to use the burnt tree brush, and I absolutely love this brush. It mimics snow texture really well. So we're going to take this white, that is the 6th color in the first row, take it like 4% size, about 40% or so opacity. If it's a little over, that's completely fine. And I'm going to start down here and just lightly go back and forth, not switching to the blur tool, and adding trace amounts of color and kind of just building up as we go down. And we're highlighting the right side of the mountain just a little bit. And then as soon as we get to the top, and feel free to put as little or as much highlight as you like. This brush is really fun and you can make a lot of really cool textures with it. And then we're going to put a little bit of a highlight over here. Over here. Just kind of randomly going in and adding texture. And down here, I'm going to add just a little bit of a heavier color line because I'm going to go in and blend that out. And then I'm going to move the camera over just a little bit. And lightly repeat the same steps on the other side. And I'm keeping my eye pencil almost straight up and down. It's got a little bit of a curve, and I'm using very, very light pressure. Okay, we're going to connect that just a little bit. So I'm going to take this layer. We're going to turn down the opacity of this layer quite a bit, about 51%. I'm going to take the damp brush again, and we're going to just lightly blur up into the mountain, kind of just creating like a nice little misty haze. Misty haze for days. Okay. Okay, so once you're happy with your blending, I'm going to take a new layer. We're going to use that same color. I'm going to actually make my brush just a little bit smaller, about 2%, same opacity, and I'm going to go in there and we're going to detail highlight over top. And this is a really clever way to add a couple different layers of transparency and details without having to, because now we don't have to have that color that the opacity brings it to. We still can just keep the same color white and get a lot of different fun effects from it. And we're just going in and highlighting the edges. Just ever so softly. And feel free to make big decisions. Mountains don't come in one size fit all, which is why I love them. And I just feel like it is so much fun because no matter how much planning, you can kind of get the general shape, but every single time you make it, it's going to be different, which is super cool. We're just gonna kind of lightly fill that in. So I'm going to make my brush bigger. We're gonna come down here and I'm gonna add some bigger snow strokes down at the bottom. And then we're gonna switch directions and kind of go up the other way. So I'm going to take my blur tool again. We're gonna go to about 6% size, and I'm gonna take the opacity down to like 18%. This is just going to be barely softening some of the edges, but we still want to retain the texture. We just kind of want to match all of our textures together. Make that just a little bit bigger. Oops. Nope, wrong color. We're gonna fill that in. There we go. So after you soften that up, I'm going to zoom back in just a little bit. I'm going to create a new layer. We're going to take this blue, that is the 5th color in the first row. I'm going to shrink the size of that tool again, about 3%, and then 40% or so opacity, and we're going to fill in the shadows. And the shadows are going to look a little crazy at first, but you'll see what we do here in just a second. We're just going to lightly fill in that shadow color. Put a little bit right there too. Perfect. So we're going to take the opacity of this and turn it down, and then I'm going to take the saturation just a little bit, turn it down to about 24% or so. Perfect. So this initial layer, I still think it's just a little bit too light, or too dark, sorry. We need to lighten it up. We're going to lighten that up to about 56%. Now, if you liked it the other way, that's perfectly fine. I just want mine just a little bit lighter, just to indicate that it's further away. So I'm going to come in here. We're going to create another new mountain area. We're going to use that same shade of blue, which is the 4th color in the first row. Oops. And we're going to switch over to the water pen. That'd be much easier. And we're going to sketch in a slightly smaller mountain in front. And then leaving this just a little bit darker will give the illusion that this mountain is just a little bit closer. So that is the main reason why I made that, the undercolor, just a little bit lighter in the other one. And I'm going to just soften that up just a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to, like before, I'm going to take the blending tool, about 10% size, we'll go up to 30% opacity. We're going to lightly blend that out. I'm going to drag some of the background color up just a little bit so that way we blend both of those colors and textures together. And then just lightly soften the bottom. Okay, I'm going to sharpen that up just a little bit here. And if your mountains change shape as we go, that is perfectly fine and perfectly okay. This is your world. Actually, we'll move it down. There we go. Okay, so just like before, we're going to take a new layer. I'm going to take this white. It's not like that. We'll go back to burnt tree. Up the sides just a little bit. We're going to create some new mountains. And the light is more diffused in this painting, so it's not coming from any one particular side. I'm going to kind of make this mountain go a little bit more heavily this way. Go in here on the side, dragging some of that white down at the bottom like before. I'm going to lightly blur the edges out. Softening the bottom up here. Just a little bit more. Soften that out. And then I'm going to take the opacity of this layer, turn it down to like 70%. We're going to add another new layer. Gotta zoom up a little bit. Gonna repeat the same process. Just sharpening up some of our mountain shape, brightening up some of the snow. I love the texture this brush gives. What do you guys think? Snow is such a hard texture to make, especially like to imitate a palette knife sliding down. But I think this does a pretty good job of mimicking that texture. Kind of just go in there, making random shapes as we go. And so this is an area I wanted to draw attention to. This triangle shape right here actually adds to the realism of it. So if you get shapes like that, definitely leave them and exaggerate them. We're gonna kind of just zoom up a little bit. I'm gonna make the size a little bit bigger. And I'm gonna drag some more snow down. We're gonna lightly blend that out again. Just ever so softly. And the reason I'm blending up just a little bit is I want it to kind of look hazy because we're gonna put a fog layer up here in just a second. Then I'm gonna go back in with another new layer, and just like before, using the 5th blue in the first row, small size brush, we're gonna fill in these shadows here. And then I'm gonna desaturate them again. 25% or so. Let's lighten it up just a little bit. And then lighten that opacity up to about 81%. I'm actually gonna lighten this mountain up just a smidge too. About 53% or so. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to flatten these out. We'll flatten all of these layers together. And I'm gonna go through, which is the fun thing about digital art. Take the soft airbrush, high opacity. We're gonna kind of just crisp up these lines just a little bit. Nothing too crazy. I just wanna create some sharper edges. Feel free to do this in your own painting, or if you're happy with the way it's looking, you don't have to. I'm just going in and creating some sharper edges, which is something you can't really do with regular, I mean you can, but once you use a palette knife to make this texture, it's very difficult to change without ruining the whole thing. So I am definitely going to take advantage of that. Perfect. Okay, so once you're happy with your mountains, we're going to make a new layer. I'm going to take this pinky color again. That's the 3rd color in the first row. Take the soft airbrush. And I'm going to lay a stripe of color about throughout the whole center of the painting. And then I'm going to take Gaussian blur. And we're going to blur that out about 35%. I'm going to turn down the opacity just a little bit, about 69–70% or so. And we've got our mountains. And we have reached our first painting break. So if you need to stop and to rest and stretch your legs for a moment or go get something to eat, I'll be here waiting for you to begin when you're ready. So in a new layer, we're going to start our trees. I'm actually going to just put down our base first. So I'm going to take this dark green, that is the third color in the second row. I'm going to make the size of the soft airbrush. You can do this with the damp brush too, but I find it easier, or the water pen really, and using the right color. We're going to lay down our base. I find it easier just to put down the whole base first. And then what I'm going to do, we're going to come in here, actually, and then using this blue color, that is like a dark teal, making the size of the soft airbrush a little bit smaller. We're going to take the opacity down to about 26%. With a very light hand, you're going to go in there and sketch some color over top. And then we're going to blur it together, about 16% or so. Okay, after we have it blurred out just a little bit, I'm going to zoom up here. We're going to go in with the water pen. We're going to take the water pen opacity down to about 30%, take the size to about 9%, and we're going to lightly flick upwards, dragging that color and creating the vague impression that there is a forest in the background. And this is one of the main reasons I love the water pen so much, because there's so many different things you can do with it. It plays really well with the damp brush too. I find their textures match really well. And feel free to draw. It's like light flicking motions. Feel free to pull bigger ones and smaller trees up into the background. And if there ever should be an area that gets like too heavy, you can always go back in the other way and pull them down too. That'll create some more dimension as well. But generally just flicking up and down. These trees are really, really far away, so we don't want too much detail. And using Gaussian blur and putting those two colors together will give us a really nice color blend. So that's why I do that. So we're going to back up just a little bit, which looks pretty good because this area right here and this area right here are going to get covered with trees. So I think that's looking pretty good. The next thing we're going to do, I'm going to add a new layer, and we're going to start doing our pine trees. So I have a video coming out soon that's going to share how, like, in more specifics, how to paint pine trees, because I feel like pine trees are kind of a hard texture to paint. So we're going to go in here. That video I'm hoping to have out either next week or the end of this week, maybe. Just depends on what my schedule is like, but we will see. Okay, so to go in and paint our first pine tree, we're going to create a straight line. I'm going to kind of zoom up. We're going to go to the water pen. And then using kind of flicking motions outwards, we're going to start creating our pine tree. I kind of like to think of them, and I guess this is a good way to show it. So if you do one big one, you're going to do a couple of like little ones next to it, and think of them kind of as like little clusters, and then kind of just filling in any of the spaces. That way nothing is too similar. They're all like in the same family of painting, but it's all differentiated. It looks a little bit more natural. A little bit more realistic anyways, if that makes sense. For whatever reason, too, I find painting one side of them first. I paint from the right to the left more easily. I don't know about you. You may be completely different, but I, for whatever reason, feel like that just works better for me. So I'm going to kind of just flick that shape out. And down here, I'm kind of making the same motions, only downwards and outwards. And then just filling in the spaces. Okay, so once you get the one side done, we're going to take the canvas, we're going to flip it, and you're going to repeat the same thing. And I like to, we're going to make just a smaller line here and extend that up just a little bit. I'm going to make some smaller ones. Oops, not that one. I don't like that one. There we go. So I always try to make sure that the other side is just a little bit different in spacing from the other one. Sorry for the crinkling noise. I just hit my water bottle. And basically just repeating the same thing where we're making like one little group and then putting a couple of like cluster strokes around it. And then repeating the process as we go down. And down here will be the widest area. So not, if all of your strokes don't, you know, go all the way to the center, that is perfectly fine. Sorry, that was the dryer. You know, it is funny because my house is always like super quiet until I hit record. And then like everything goes off at once, which I always think is funny. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, and I always do this with important objects in a painting, I'm just going to make a copy of it just in case. Oops. In a new layer, I'm going to basically repeat this process with this new green. Only the difference between what we just did, I'm going to make a couple of strokes as we go down in the center. Oops, not that. And drag them the other way as well. But we are leaving a little bit of that dark green showing underneath. Basically just repeating the process, getting a little bit looser with our strokes as we go down and a little bit bigger and wider. And if you notice too, I am leaving spaces like right here that stay dark. Just making sure we don't lose all of our green. Okay. Putting a couple of strokes in between. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to turn this down just a little bit. I'm going to take down the opacity, about 40% saturation, 46% brightness. I'm going to combine these two layers down. And then what I'm going to do, we're going to go back to the blur tool using the water pen again with a small size, about 2% size, medium to high opacity. It doesn't, as long as it's close. And then we're going to go in. Actually, I need a little bit bigger brush. Let's go to 4%. There we go. And we're going to kind of blend our two colors together. And this is a super easy way to create a really dimensional looking tree. We're going in and just blending, not all of our texture away, just kind of blurring some areas together, which is why it's important to leave spaces and to let some of that darker green show through. It'll create a really cool, really dimensional looking tree. Okay, so after we have that blended out, I'm going to make a copy of this tree just so we have it as a base. I'm going to move it. We're going to take our first tree and we're going to put it about right here. I'm actually going to, and make sure your lasso tool is in free form. We're going to make that just a little bit bigger and taller. I'm going to plop that about right there. Then I'm going to make another copy of that original layer, make sure it's hidden. We're going to move it. Let's stick it about right there. And I'm actually going to flip this one as well. Make that a little bit thinner. Move that up, put that down, make another copy, and we're just going to repeat this same process. That way we can save our hands a little bit of work. I'm going to make this one a little bit squattier, a little bit thinner. Stick that one about right there. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the same process on the other side. Over the years, I've really tried to figure out ways to help save our hands. Our hands are our most important tool. And if we can save ourselves from getting carpal tunnel, I will take it. So I'm going to make this one really tall. We're going to flip it. And by changing their sizes, you really don't notice that it's all the same tree. And we're going to go back in and add a little bit of more detailing to them so they look a little less similar. But once you're happy with that layer of trees, I'm going to combine all of these trees together, but be careful not to combine the original layer together because we're still going to use that one. I'm going to take this layer, we're going to turn down the brightness and the saturation just a little bit, about 39% or so saturation and about 48% brightness, just minimally. So I'm going to make a new layer. We're going to make another copy of that and move that up. I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to make this up just a little bit. Put that about right there. Make another copy. Put that, just changing the size. And move that back up. There we go. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to collapse these three together. I'm going to brighten this up just a little bit. About 53% or so brightness, and we're going to brighten the saturation just a little bit. Actually, let's turn it to about 51%. I'm actually going to change the hue of these just a little too. Go to about 47% or so hue. That really will make quite a little difference. Yep. Okay, so once you get that together, we are going to add a new layer. And I'm going to come down here. Then using the 5th green in the 2nd row, using the water pen, we're going to fill in some of our bush area. That way it gets rid of all of the edges, so we don't have to worry about those. I'm going to fill in the edges over here too. And we'll add our grass here in a minute, but I'm going to switch over to the damp brush. And we're going to lightly blend out the bottom of this just a little bit. Kind of like what we did with the mountains. I just want to soften that edge up just a little bit. And we're going to get rid of any hard line up between here, and we're going to put some color for the grass here in just a moment. But I'm just softening that up, dragging that down. I'm going to drag some of that green up to the water line. Feel free to add more color if too much of it gets blended away. This is just kind of acting like a background layer. Kind of like the mist in the background. It's kind of just creating a foundation for it. Okay, so once you're happy with that, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to take the damp brush again, take a smaller size, like 3% or so size, and we're going to lightly buff this out just a little bit. Come over here and repeat the process. Just softening any hard edges up. And I tend to paint really closely too. I don't know if you do that. Actually, I'm going to add, that really got blended away there, so I'm going to add a little bit more here. I don't know if you do that as well, but I find by blending close up, if you get rid of the hard edges close up, generally, and just like keep checking back and forth, you're not going to have hard edges from afar, which will really help not draw the eye to any areas that you may not feel as comfortable with. Okay, so once you're happy with that, I'm going to go in. We're going to switch the layer over into soft light with a new layer. I'm going to switch over to damp brush again. We're going to switch to this black. That is the first color in the second row. Take about 50% or size opacity. Actually, 10% size. And we're going to add just a little bit of additional color just to create a shadow at the baseline. And then just a little bit in between the bushes. So this is just a very minimal layer. You don't want to go too crazy with it. And then repeat the same on the other side. And then we're going to go through and lightly blend that out. Make sure the size is much bigger because mine was way too small. Okay, I'm going to take the opacity down just a little bit. That looks a little, like if you get areas like that, we'll just blend that out just a little bit more. Perfect. Okay, so with the new layer, and we're going to use the, let's use the fourth green in the second row. We're going to go to the damp brush, go about 90% or so opacity, and I'm going to create one main bush. Basically, we're going to kind of like create cloud shapes only with dots. And then we're going to come up under here, and you're basically making 2 rows of it. Just kind of variegate. You don't want like a straight line of dots. You just want kind of a variegated dot pattern, which will all automatically give us a slightly bush looking shape. You want to leave a little bit of that color from the background to show through. I'm going to take the blur tool, 7% or so size. We'll go down to like 35% or so opacity. And we're going to lightly buff that out, leaving just a little bit of the texture just to kind of create the impression of bushes. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take that bush we just created and I'm going to make a couple copies. And this is where we can really have some fun. So I'm going to take the color and saturation tool, lighten that up just a little bit, change the saturation. And now we can really add, and I'm going to repeat the process, some fun variegation and sizes, all with the same bush. So I'm going to get rid of the edge here, because what I want this hard little line between these two right here. That way we get a little bit of separation. And I'm going to lightly blend that out. I'm actually going to change the hue of this one just a little bit and change the brightness, saturation just a little bit. That way we get a little bit of variegation. I'm actually going to make a copy of that one and put it over here. That way we get some of that tone over there as well. Not doing that. That happens, feel free to use the eraser tool because sometimes some little happy accidents, we don't want them. Which that sounds really strange. Anyways, I'm going to take another copy. We're going to flip this over here. Put that about right there. So I'm going to take the original bush layer. I'm going to make another copy of it. We're going to shrink it and put it right here. Do you see how we're getting all this fun new texture in here without having to work super hard? Especially if you don't have a lot of time to paint during the day. The easier you make this for yourself, the funner it tends to be. So I'm going to change the saturation of that just a little bit. We're gonna, not do that. We're gonna blend that out just a little bit. I'm gonna make another copy of that one. I'm gonna stick it, I'm actually gonna flip it and put it right in here. And change the saturation just a little bit. Which gives us quite a bit of texture with minimal amount of work, which is awesome. So now that this is together, I'm actually going to remove the trace layer for just a second. I'm going to go through, we're going to make a copy canvas layer of this. That way we kind of save our progress and are working off a copy. And all of these colors are now together. So I'm going to take the blend tool and we're going to lightly buff out any texture showing through from the trees. It's okay to leave a little bit of it. I just don't want a huge portion of it there. Just up in here. And this too will help to add a little bit of diversity in the bushes. That way it's not just looking like a copy layer over and over and over again. That's our little secret. So I'm going to lightly blend that up. So down here, what I want you to do too, when you reach the bottom part of it, we're going to lightly do little circular motions to kind of create some texture in between the ground that is ambiguous and the bushes. And you'll see what we do with that here in just a minute. And then basically over here, we're just going to repeat the process. Just kind of lightly further blending those areas out. We'll put some detail leaves on it in just a little bit. But we just kind of want to make sure all the textures in the background kind of work together. And then over here, just like the other side, I'm going to up the opacity just a little bit. And we're going to create some detail texture between the ground and the bushes. Okay, so once we have that, I'm going to put our trace layer back on. I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to switch back over to the damp brush, which is still on. And then I'm going to go to about 3% size, about 30% or so opacity as long as it's close. And now starting in the center right here with a very, very light hand, we're going to start laying down some grass. Actually, we're going to raise the opacity up to 40%. There we go. So with grass, I'm kind of making sad faces, which will create a very natural looking slope. And I'm kind of doing it at this angle as well because we kind of want it to look like our grass is sloping into the water. I'm leaving just a little bit of that shadow texture line between the bushes and the grass. So like right here. Just kind of going in and painting little sad faces in our happy little painting. If you guys have any questions below too, just let me know. Sometimes I know this is fast, but I actually really like recording them this way. I feel like I can talk to you guys a little bit easier. Sometimes like if I record this first and then I go back in and put the audio over top, sometimes I forget things that I did. So this kind of helps as we're doing it. So I'm just going to lightly take up the line to about right there. What I think I want to do right here, we're going to take another tree from this bottom layer. I'm going to pull it up here. We're going to shrink it. I'm going to make it darker to match with the other ones. Going to take it, put it back in freeform. We're going to make it a little skinnier. skinny legend, and then we're gonna put that about right there. I'm going to erase some of the tree line. Actually, that's too much of it. We're gonna erase this to about right here. We're gonna make this tree just a smidge bigger. And stick her about right there. After we get that blended together, I'm gonna do another copy canvas. We're gonna put that over top. That way it is now above. And, oh, oops. That's something. Okay, so here's a good little mistake that I almost did. When you're doing copy canvases, make sure that the trace layer is not in the copy canvas, because it will be there if not. So we're gonna make a copy canvas without the trace, put the trace back on. I'm going to create a new layer. So using this light green that is the second color in the third row, I'm going to shrink this down to about 3% size, 40% or so opacity. With a very light hand, we're going to highlight some more grass. And you want to keep a really light hand. You don't want to keep like lifting and dropping the brush down. We don't want like super heavy color. Just enough to create just a little bit of a highlight. We're going to run that right up to the water's edge. And I'm going to take just a little bit of that texture and put it in that hollow space. I'm going to come over here and repeat the same process. Just going back and forth in like these boomerangy, sad face shapes. Kind of like sideways parentheses. But that doesn't sound as fun as a sad face. So I'm going to come over here real quick. We're just going to blend that little hard edge away. And then I'm going to take color and just, start over here and then work our way into those hollow spaces again, creating just a little bit of texture. Okay, so I'm going to take this layer and we're going to turn it down just a little bit. I'm trying to do about 78% or so opacity. I'm going to put that layer down. All right, so we're going to start painting our water. So we're going to take the damp brush again in a new layer, and we're going to take this to about 40% or so opacity with a slightly bigger size. Make sure I have a new, we're in a new layer. I'm going to, so a little trick here to get rid of the initial heavy amount of color, start painting in the outer part of the program and work your way into where you're actually going to need a lightly more soft color. So we are only laying down color roughly in the center of the painting, and I'm leaving just a little bit of that transparency showing through. We want just a little bit of that color. And then I'm going to take the blending brush, go to about 8% size, 45% or so opacity, and we're going to just lightly blend that out. Okay, so next thing we're going to do, we're going to add another new layer. Taking that blue from earlier, we're going to put a little bit of that color right along the edges. We're going to take this white color and lay it literally right on top of it, just making sure you don't completely cross over the edge. And then we're going to take a little bit of that pink, that is the middle color, and lay it right around in the center. And you don't want anything crazy, you just want a little reflection. So I'm going to take the blending brush again. Oops, too much. We're going to go down to about 34% or so size, and I'm going to lightly blend away the edges. That way we get something really soft looking. So when you're happy with your blending, I'm going to turn this layer off again. We're going to do another copy canvas layer. I'm going to paste, put the copy canvas back on. I'm going to add a new layer. We're going to put that layer in soft light. I'm going to take the black, that is the second color in the first row. With the damp brush again. About 50% or so opacity. And I'm going to lightly take this on those edges. We don't want to go, I would take it up right before halfway into the center. I wouldn't even go minimal amounts first. Do it very sparingly, but making the edges just a little bit deeper and darker, which is exactly what we want. Okay, when you're happy with the amount that you have, I'm going to turn this layer down just a little bit, 81% or so, and I'm going to merge that layer down. I'm going to take the blending brush, about 4% size, 35% or so opacity, and we're going to lightly run back and forth. Okay, we're going to create a water line. I'm going to add a new layer using the pinky color. That is the third color in the first row that we used for the sky. And we're going to switch over to the water pen. I'm going to switch over to like a really small size, like 6%. I'm going to go to about 66% size. And we're going to lightly scribble in a water line. You don't want to do anything too like straight, so I'm kind of just variegating my paint strokes. And then I'm going to take this and make it a bigger size, really low opacity, like 25%. We're going to lightly blend it into our water. I'm going to take another new layer. We're going to just sharpen that up just a little bit. And I'm doing really soft, short movements with this. And we're going to lightly blend that out again. In a new layer, I'm going to grab this white, that is the 6th color in the first row. We're going to do even smaller, like 2% size. And I'm going to kind of just scribble and brighten that edge up just a little bit more. Kind of gives us some more depth and dimension in the outline. I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. Which brings us to the second painting break. So if you need to stretch your legs and take a break, I'll be waiting for you when you're ready to begin again. And I'm going to merge those layers down. So after those layers are merged down, I'm going to turn this off again. We're going to create another copy canvas, and I'm going to start the finishing touches of this painting. I'm going to add a new layer. We're going to put it into overlay. I'm going to do damp brush. We're going to pick this white yellow color. That is the 4th color in the 4th row. Let's do about 3% size, 46% or so opacity. And we're going to lightly start going over top of the grass again. And you want to use a really light hand to be kind of selective, because the effect can be kind of heavy if you're really heavy-handed with it. So use it sparingly. And I'm kind of just repeating the same movements as before. And this will really help brighten up some of those areas we created. So like right here where it kind of recesses, I'm creating a more straight looking stroke. And then where it kind of dips down towards the water, it's curved. After we get the grass added, I'm going to select just a couple of areas. And we're going to put some of that just on the tops of the bushes. And you can kind of sporadically put it on through. We're going to put a little bit of color back here to kind of indicate that the bushes continue back here too. And just putting them on the tops of the trees. I'm gonna take the blending brush, and just from where it's sitting right now, I'm just gonna lightly blur over those edges. And we're gonna lightly blend over the grass, just softening what we just created. So, fun little thing, we're gonna soften that up too. Now onto the fun little thing. So I'm gonna take another copy canvas layer, we're gonna do a paste. I'm gonna go in, and what I wanna do, we're gonna use damp brush, 2% size, we'll go to 52% or so opacity. I'm gonna color grab this new color. Oops, let's actually do like 80% opacity. And we're gonna make some smaller detail brush strokes and dots over top of the bushes. And now we are creating the individual leaves. Oops, not that. We're gonna color drop this again. And you'll wanna make sure to kind of follow. So we changed all of these bush colors, so don't just use the same color to make all of the leaves. I mean, you can, but it's not gonna be as like dimensional looking. And you can even like change colors throughout. So a fun little effect here that's going to add a lot of depth. We're going to take this right here, and I'm going to put just a little bit over the darkness. I almost said over the depth. We're going to put this over the dark areas, and that'll create a lot of depth from farther away. Oh, looks so cool. And we don't need to go crazy with the dots. We just want to create some impression that there are smaller leaves within there. I'm going to take a couple of the dots and put them down here. Kind of just variegating the different colors in between. We're going to come over here and repeat the same process. Kind of just sharpening it up and adding some new detail areas. This way we can really like differentiate and make them all look a little bit unique and different. Because we're all unique and different. I would say that I'm sappy, but we're working with pine trees too. Oh gosh. It's the little things, isn't it? Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more right here. Then I'm gonna go in and we are going to lightly blend those areas out. Don't want to completely get rid of them, we're just softening them up. This creates some really cool textures for bushes without doing a ton of work, which is what we want to avoid. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna put another layer in soft light. I'm gonna take black, I'm gonna take the damp brush, make it like 5% size, 55% or so opacity, and we're gonna lightly put a layer of dark right in the bottom of these bushes. And we can kind of like variegate where we put it, kind of putting it on the edges of all of the bushes to create a little division between all of them, and putting a little bit into the centers and a little bit into the edges of the grass line. And then we're going to put a little more over here, basically just following the same steps, dragging it into areas that may be a little too light or we want a little bit more depth. And then I'm going to take just a little bit here and put it around the edges of the pond again. Just around the edges. We're gonna take the opacity down just a little bit. And then I'm gonna take the damp brush and we're gonna blend that out. Just softening up any harder edges that are made. Once you have that blended out, actually I'm gonna put just a little bit more over here. There we go. I'm going to add another layer of detail leaves here, and it's gonna be a little bit smaller. I'm gonna do another copy canvas and paste. That way we save, just in case I don't like it. So I'm gonna add a new layer. We're gonna put it into overlay, and then using that white yellow color again, and we're gonna just highlight the edges. So I'm gonna take this, we're gonna take this color dropped color, I'm gonna get rid of that, and I'm gonna drop just a little bit of highlight over top of these new bushes. Just periodically, we don't want anything crazy. Just adding just a little bit of sparkle. This is our sparkle layer. Putting just a little bit of color into the darker areas or anywhere that looks a little bit flat. So I'm gonna put a little bit more right here. Then we're gonna lightly blend these out. I'm going to take the opacity of these down just a little bit. Okay, we're going to do another copy canvas layer. I'm going to do a paste. Then I'm going to take soft light. We're going to take soft airbrush, take black, and we're going to create a little vignette around the edges. Just a little U. We don't want to take it too far down. Oops, that was too far down. And then we're going to blur it out just a little bit. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. I'm going to take another new layer. We're going to put it in hard light. Still using black. And I'm going to put just a little bit of color just on both edges. We're going to blend that out. Blur it out using Gaussian blur again. Blur it to about 22% or so. I'm going to turn this down. I'm going to add another new layer. We're going to put this into overlay. I'm going to grab this white yellow color again. That is the fourth color in the fourth row. Let's use the light pen. Ooh, this is going to be fun. So the light's kind of coming in from the top left corner up here. So we're going to drag. If you hold it down, you'll get a nice little light ray. And we're going to get another one running through the water. You can put as many or as little as you'd like. Oops. Sometimes they don't want to snap. I'm going to put another one right there and another one right there. So I'm going to blur these out just a little bit. And this is a little secret I've got here. We're going to take the opacity of this, turn it down. I'm going to make a copy of this layer. Now this layer that's underneath, we're going to use Gaussian blur again. I'm going to blur it to about 22%. This top layer now, I'm going to turn it down. And we've got some highlights. It's subtle, but it's definitely there. I want to see what that looks like. Ooh, okay, so this bottom layer again, basically just repeating the process. I'm going to blur that out just a little bit. Yes. Oh, yes. That's perfect. Okay, so I'm going to take a copy canvas again. Paste. And right in the area be our finishing little touches here. So like right here, right here, right here, are some detail highlights. We're going to take this pink color, still in overlay. We're going to just lighten the water up just a little bit, just to create a little bit of reflection. And then I'm going to take the blending brush, and we're going to lightly blend it out. I'm going to take this. I'm going to blend that up just a little bit. Just kind of softening those areas up just a little bit. Softening that up. And see, we get so many beautiful effects in here and didn't have to have all of these colors in the palette, which is wonderful. And that is one of the biggest things I've been working on in my own artwork, is creating pieces that are all a much more limited color palette. I just feel like it helps out so much. Okay, so we're going to do a copy canvas and paste. We're going to go in and add just a little bit of grass texture. So using the damp brush, go to like 1% size, medium to high opacity, like 75%. Actually, let's go down to like 67%. And we're going to lightly lay some grass texture in here. We just want it to be light, nothing too crazy. Just kind of, and to make some convincing grass too, you'll kind of want to like go like up and down and up and down. I'm exaggerating that way you can see it, but grabbing some of the darker color and pulling it into the lighter areas, and then grabbing the lighter areas and dragging them into the darker. So here I'm going to just kind of add some scrub between the bushes and the, oh, that's a good example of this, like right here, like dragging some of that color down. That way it kind of blends together. And then if you want to get rid of some of these texture things too, if anything's bothering you up close. And I'm just going through, kind of adding some detail texture strokes through this. Just real quickly. Basically just creating the impression of some grass. Here, so this is going to be really small grass flicks, just because it is farther away, and you'll kind of want to alternate the size. And just pulling some of that into there. Okay, so after we have our grass texture added, so you guys won't have this, you guys will have this brown, but I somehow forgot to put a brown in the palette, so let me get that created. And I'm gonna just lightly, with the water pen, we're gonna add some indication that there are branches and tree trunks. Trunks. Just down the center, and just periodically, you don't want a ton of it. And then I'm going to take this lighter brown that we have and just kind of periodically place a highlight, just a really thin little highlight over some of them. And we are done. I hope you guys enjoyed this painting. The last thing we have left to do is to sign our work. So I've kind of become a fan of using the light pen, and I'm going to use this really bright red to sign our painting in the spirit of Happy Little Accidents. Thank you so much for watching, friend. I hope you had fun. If you recreate this painting, please tag me if you're on Instagram at TimStarStudio. Let me know what you thought of the video below, and if you like this kind of content and want to see more videos like this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video, friend. Happy painting!